take number 22. Hello and welcome to another Sunday rant with me, John. Again, we are back in the front room, and for various reasons I think I'll stay doing these for the foreseeable future from the front room, purely because the studio has become too damn cluttered with a lot of the equipment I've been buying recently to get the camera and the lights and everything else that needs to work. In fact, I'm actually looking at the moment for LED lights that can be hung from the walls to get rid of the lights, because the lights require stands and the stands require distance, and you get the drift. So here we are, front room, surrounded by two of my legendary workstations. Here we have my T1. I so enjoy playing this. I think the hammer action on this T1 is superb. The hammer action on this is not bad, but this just has a much nicer feel to it. And I love playing this. You know, it's true what they said. I mean, I think the keyboards, I mean, the difference between this and that, and then this and the Kronos, is noticeable. The Kronos keyboard is nice though. You know, don't get me wrong, the Kronos, the 88 key hammer action on the Kronos is brilliant. I'm having a bad hair day, so ignore my hair. I'm having a bad audio day, so I'll come on to that in a minute. So all the Aira gear that was here has gone back down to the studio, and I'm left with my MX-1, which is here, and I've been playing around with my DO5. There you are, there's my DO5, and my TR09, which of course, for those of you who don't know, that's the boutique version of the 909. So here we are. Now I'm going to go on to the MX-1. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the MX-1. I have numerous questions on the channel about the MX-1, about what the MX-1 really is, and I'm not going to go into what the MX-1 really is, but I'm just going to tell you about a new use or a new use case I've got for using the MX-1. So I've always used the MX-1 as sort of a bridging mixer, if you like, between certain instruments in the studio. So all the instruments in the studio have audio outs that go into a patch panel, and then from that patch panel they then go into a mixer, and then obviously they then come out the monitors in the studio. That's kind of how the studio is set up, okay? But certain instruments, like the Aira instruments, quite often what I'll do is I'll put them into this mixer, into the MX-1, and use it as a sub-mixer. So if I'm sort of running out of mixer channels on the main mixer, quite often I use this as a substitute for that. Okay, so that's kind of how it's been set up in the studio. Now, one of the things I've been playing with is how to get, when I'm doing videos of this stuff, is how to get this into this in a nice clean way. I've tried all kinds of different solutions, some successful, some less successful, in terms of being able to route the audio and control the audio while I'm actually talking. Now what I can do, and I've done on numerous occasions, is I've recorded the audio separately and then sort of brought it together in post-production, which is probably how a lot of people do it. But really what I'd like to do is quite often when I'm just doing a very short piece, rather than having to muck around with post-production, it's just easier to record it straight into the recorder. Now, I've sort of kind of changed the setup a bit, and it's sort of started me thinking about how do I improve the audio setup. And the audio today is abysmal, I will give you that, and the reason why that is I'll come on to that in a sec. So, what I've been using the MX-1 for is the MX-1 currently has 4 channels of line-in audio, okay, which are all mono channels, but you can set it up so you can have a left and right stereo feed. And you do that by going into the settings of the MX-1 and saying bind channels 1 and 2 together, bind channels 3 and 4 together, and treat them as stereo channels. So instead of having 4 channels, you only have 2, but you have 2 stereo channels. Hopefully you followed that. Now, the MX-1 will then present that to a computer through its USB, and you can record that all that audio coming in from those channels through the USB. Job done. It doesn't quite work when I'm using this thing because this is not computer, so I would be recording that to that and then this and then have to sync the two up. So I'm sure there's ways of doing it, and lots of professionals out there probably have very easy ways of doing it, but I'm not a professional, I'm not an amateur, and I'm not going to drop several thousand quid on an audio recorder at the moment for doing this. So anyway, what I've been doing actually is, what I've found with the MX-1 is MX-1 has a line out, or and you can basically send from the MX-1 into this thing, and that works really, really well. Well, it did until about an hour before I started recording, because I was wearing my lapel mic about an hour before I started recording, and I actually sort of like attached it here, and then there's my lapel mic, and I attached it to my radio mic, or my radio pack that sits in my pocket when I'm doing this stuff. And then, for one reason or another, I didn't sit down and record straight away. I sort of went off to do some other stuff with my mic on, and as I walked back in the door, as you can see, there is copper now extruding from the top of the strain relief, because what happened was I caught the cable went like that, and I can feel all the bumps where the copper's been pulled in here, and it's now been pulled and separated from the jack from the lapel mic. So unfortunately, my lapel mic is now, as they would say in France, French connectioned. As I say in my studio, it's now knackered. So that is now ready for only one place and only fit for one place, and that is the bin. So the audio is being recorded directly from the microphone on this thing, and not as I normally would, which is have it routed in through the audio jack via my lapel mic. Moving on. On this side you can see a pile of discs, and on this side you can see a pile of discs. Okay, so I have been working on the disc library, and another pile of discs has arrived that need to go into the disc library. So these are Yamaha TX16W. So this was a disc library that I picked up on the internet, and I've bought it, and I will be duplicating. There you go. So I will be duplicating these. Well, I'll say duplicating, that's not really the right word. I will be ISOing these, making direct replicas and storing them in the disk library on hard disk. Why am I doing this, you might be asking? Well, I've mentioned the disk library on several occasions, and the whole idea is to preserve these disks. These things are getting very old now, the media is getting worn. They've been used numerous times in and out of machines, and it's not going to be too much longer before the media starts to degrade. And when I say degrade, what tends to happen with this sort of stuff is, after a while, the magnetic coating that is on the disc starts to separate from the disc, and then it becomes completely unusable, and the whole thing, you might as well just put in the bin. So the whole idea is to try and save as much of this as possible. That's the idea behind the disc library. And obviously I'm buying stuff for the instruments I own, because it's a bit pointless buying stuff for the instruments I don't own. So that's sort of where the disc libraries come from. The stuff that's in this tray here, this stuff is the stuff that's already gone in. The ISO's been created. The stuff that's here and the stuff that's on the floor there, that's stuff that I've still yet to sift my way through. Some of it is rubbish, and some of it is useful. So some of it is, it's one of those things. But the disc library itself does lead me to an ethical dilemma. Now, what I've said in the past is the whole idea of this is to be able to share this this stuff with other people who have legacy keyboards or legendary keyboards, depending on which way you look at it. Now, in most instances, the keyboard manufacturers that made this stuff in the first place, and the software houses or artists or whoever it was who made the disc patches, have long since washed their hands of the keyboard, of the technology, of the support. If you are lucky, you may be able to get the owner's manual from the keyboard manufacturer. If you're really, really lucky, you might actually be able to get a copy of the service manual out of them. And I say really, really lucky because, to be honest, most of the keyboard manufacturers don't actually have the service manuals. And in a lot of instances, and I know one of the keyboard manufacturers actually has the owner's manuals on their websites, but they've gone and got the owner's manuals from people around the world who've kindly scanned them in for them because they no longer have physical hard copies. So we are where we are, kind of. But they've washed their hands of the keyboard. You can no longer buy this stuff. You haven't been able to buy this stuff for 20 plus years. Here's the ethical dilemma about this. The ethical dilemma is, if today you wanted something that is currently being published or in print, as they say, go buy it. Right? There are various places you can go get it, go buy it. Pay the person the money and respect the work they put into producing it. I have no issue with that as a model. You know, you buy it on your Kindle, you buy it in a bookshop, you buy the software online, you pay the author the money. Okay. When it comes to this stuff, which you can't buy anywhere, there is nowhere to buy it. What is the position on copyright? That's the ethical dilemma. Now, if you can't buy it, it's not in publish, and nobody is willing to publish it, how does that work? Now, you know, I haven't sold any of this stuff. You know, it's not my intention to sell it for a profit anyway, even if I did. That's not my intention. My intention is that people who want a copy of those discs should be able to get hold of them, rather than, and there are individuals on the internet who are actively out there making a profit by selling this stuff, and I think that's wrong. I think paying a fair price for it to be duplicated and stored and whatever, that's a different kettle of fish, because that's preservation. That's not trying to make a profit out of this stuff. So where I'm kind of coming from here is, you know, where does copyright kick in? Where does copyright in? If you're an artist and you write a song, or I think if you're an author, and you write a book, then as long as the book's in print, you get royalties for it. Once the book goes out of print, then the whole royalty thing becomes a bit sort of opaque, if you like, because unless you can buy it second hand, you have to get a copy of it somewhere, because you can't buy it brand new because it's not in print anymore. And similarly with records, back in the day, you obviously buy a vinyl record, buy a CD, buy a tape by the artist, and yes, there's always been, you know, music piracy that's been around since year immemorial, but you tended to go and buy the record by the artist, and buying the record by the artist got a share of that fee. Admittedly, probably not a lot, but they got a share of that fee. Now, with the modern portals, the Spotifys, the iTunes, etc., the Google Tunes, or whatever they call it, you know, you now get, the artist gets paid that way. And admittedly, the artists sort of like get a bit nerked about it. But then again, having said that, you know, every time somebody plays a tune on Spotify, you get paid. You know, so it's a recurring model, as opposed to the old model, which was you got paid the first time that record was sold, And if I bought that record then sold it to my mate, you don't get paid again. So that's sort of kind of the model's evolved, that every time you play a tune now, the artist gets paid. Maybe not as much as they got paid when they did the album, when they sold the record. That's where we are. Now, music is protected by a series of copyright laws, and I think software publication is also protected by a series of copyright laws. That basically says if you reproduce that within 50 years or 75 years, then you are liable. But where does it stand for this stuff? Where does copyright even exist for this stuff? You know, where a publisher or a keyboard manufacturer has literally washed their hands of the keyboard and support, where do we stand? Now, Korg, when they discontinued the Oasis, 2 years after they discontinued support for the Oasis, Korg effectively said, the software engines you can have for nothing. You know, so those things that they were originally, I think they were about $250 at that time. You know, those software engines you can have as long as you can prove you're an Oasis user, you've got an Oasis, you can have the engines for nothing. And then you basically had to register. The Oasis gave you a code, you registered the code, and you were able to download and install the engines. And there are actually videos on the channel of me doing that, because I bought this thing second hand, and I then registered it, and I was able to get the software engines. I also upgraded the RAM. So the ethical dilemma is, where do we stand on this stuff? And I'm sort of like putting it out to the wider audience and saying, well, where do we stand on this stuff? Because I have absolutely no idea where you stand from a legal stance, where effectively the manufacturer has just washed their hands, or the publishing house has washed their hands. It's not in public, it's not in print. You can no longer buy this stuff from whoever originally sold it. You can only get it second hand. The media is now starting to fail. Where do you stand? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, honestly. But I thought I'd put it out there. Till next time. Bye-bye.
Remember, hit that like button if you like what you saw. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified about more rants, more mailbag, more questions and answers, and more videos about this sort of stuff when it's loaded to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.